What if I told you some of the most disconnected people, those written off as treatment resistant, could actually thrive if we just approached them a little differently? Hi, I'm Dr. Aaron Brinen. I'm a psychologist and a co-creator of recovery-oriented cognitive therapy. And on this channel, we explore tools that actually work for those living with psychosis and how to get them to work. Today, I'm going to introduce you to CTR, recovery-oriented cognitive therapy, and why it might change everything. By the end of today's video, you're going to understand the core model of CTR, why it might work when other approaches stall, and how to start using it right now, today. Whether you're a provider, a family member, or an individual living well with psychosis. Have you ever had the experience of asking all of the normal therapy questions or being asked all of normal therapy questions and getting one-word answers or worse? People with psychosis can disengage from therapy easily, but so can anyone. Providers can label them as unmotivated or non-compliant, or worse, low-functioning. But what if we've been misunderstanding it all along? I once spoke to a nurse who said, "Oh, that guy, he won't talk to you about anything unless you talk to him about the Eagles. Then he'll talk your ears off." Listen, I am an incorrigible and obnoxious cognitive therapist. So if you tell me somebody won't talk to you about anything and then talk to the person about something, the Eagles, well, they will talk to you about something. They just don't want to talk to you about your garbage. Meds, showers, therapy. Come on, let's get real. Would you want to talk to somebody about that? I wouldn't. CTR flips the script and breaks the mold on treatment. Instead of starting with all of those patient topics, right? We're going to start with the topics that really matter to an individual. Those topics that activate any of us. Once we get an individual really activated, then we want to get their aspirations, those personal, meaningful, valued goals, those things that really matter to an individual, those big picture things that they want. Once you get that real vision, that vivid vision of what their future looks like you should know the breed of the dog that they're going to have in the apartment when they move out of the hospital that they're in, that level of detail, then we can break down to the steps we're going to take right here, right now to start moving toward that aspiration. Once we have that, we're going to monitor, evaluate, and systematically increase the amount of activity in the individual's life. Yeah, that's right. Nice, good, old-fashioned, classic activity scheduling. It's the heart of recovery-oriented cognitive therapy. Learn how to do that right here. We start tackling the symptoms as their obstacles to taking action toward the things an individual wants to do in their life. So the symptoms, they take a back seat to moving toward the life that the individual wants. I met a guy who hadn't left his room in weeks. Why would he, right? Every time he left his room, he had to go to the same old groups about the same old topics. I mean, let's get real. He probably could have led the groups himself. Through CTR, we reconnected through food. No one had asked him about smoking and charcoal in years, and he gave me a masterclass on it. The journey of 1,000 miles begins where you stand. And right there, we started with how to control the heat of charcoal, and the 1,000 steps was to get him back to his backyard and barbecuing for his family and his community. His voices, his fears of others, those are just obstacles to leap over to get him to his apron. Look, this isn't just hickory smoke and charcoal. CTR is an extension of CBT for psychosis with its decades of research. Even without taking medicine, we have seen that CBT for psychosis can be effective in helping people move back to their lives. So you don't need to be this stable on medicine to ride this ride and start this therapy. But in CTR, we're privileging those problems with motivation, those problems with connection, what we call the negative symptoms, in a fusion of the know-how of cognitive therapy and the spirit of the recovery movement. In it, we're getting back to the fundamentals of the original cognitive therapy. If you ever had a chance to read Aaron T. Beck's book, Cognitive Therapy of the Emotional Disorders, he describes the two main therapies of the day. He describes psychoanalysis and he describes behaviorism. And he describes on page 9, second paragraph down, how neither of those psychotherapies will produce durable recovery, but how cognitive therapy helps the patient draw on their own problem-solving apparatus. So back in 1976, Aaron Beck, Tim Beck, is describing and thinking about recovery, and that recovery is inside the individual all along. That recovery is helping the individual draw on their own problem-solving apparatus. He believed always that it was inside the individual, and we just help to draw it out of the individual. And CTR has solid evidence behind it. Better functioning, lowered avolition and apathy, and lowered positive symptoms, those hallucinations and delusions. Further, when the therapy was removed for 6 months, they found that those benefits were maintained. We didn't have to give up on anybody. From the research, a really interesting model starts to emerge. What we find is, when you start getting a little bit more motivated, you start doing a little bit more in your life. And when you start doing a little bit more in your life, you have a little bit less time for the junk in your brain. And for the individuals that we serve, that junk can start turning into hallucinations and delusions, or those really, really strongly held beliefs. But if you have less hallucinations and less delusions, well, doesn't that make you feel a little bit more motivated? And if you're a little bit more motivated, you do more. And when you fill your life with a little bit more, you have a little bit less time for that junk in your brain. And around we go. So this righteous cycle starts to emerge. Even if you're brand new to the idea of CTR, you could start right here, right now, as soon as this video's over. Jumpstart right away. Jumpstart your next session or next interaction with a loved one with an activity or a topic that you both like to talk about. Think about flexing an empowering belief or an empowering lesson, and think about releasing some of those patient lessons that the individual has. This is your hook in CTR. But this is only the beginning. It's going to start getting more surprising. In the next video, we're going to talk about activating different modes, the patient mode versus the adaptive mode. So don't miss that. So now you know. CTR isn't about fixing what's wrong. It's about discovering what's still alive inside the individual. About growing the flowers, not pulling out all the weeds. You've got a person-centered approach, a way in, and even a story to remember it by. If this resonated, I have a playlist of videos breaking down different CTR concepts. You can watch that right here. If you want more tools for recovery, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. And pick up a copy of Living Well with Psychosis from Guilford Press. You can pick it up anywhere you get books. Thank you so much if you made it all the way to the end.